I came back from lunch to find two men already posted at my desk, both in expensive suits for a random Tuesday in early October. One of them was quietly stacking my SOP binders like he was clearing a crime scene. The other held my company-issued tablet with two fingers, like it might leak something on him. The thinner one cleared his throat and read off a little card. "Mr. Tran, your access has been revoked. We're collecting all company assets. This is a transition." Tran. That's what HR calls me when they're putting gloves on. Inside the building, everybody just called me Graham. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I watched them take my badge, my folder of validated workflows, and, what really made me clench my jaw, the sealed envelope I'd prepped for Zurich's audit partner. I'd spent 3 weekends tightening that review. Gone. Just like that. There was no manager, no handshake, just a ghosted calendar invite that vanished the second I tapped it. The building didn't even blink, just another polite disappearance. I asked to grab my jacket. The taller one nodded without looking up. That's how invisible I was now. While I reached over the chair, I slid my fingers along the underside of the seat rail and peeled off a small piece of black tape. Stuck inside was a thin flash drive, personal, secure. Not some secret backdoor nonsense, just an escrow key tied to a control protocol I designed from scratch. Approved, documented, real. I slipped it into my front pocket and turned without a word. On the way out, I passed that giant backlit wall sign near the elevators, "We win together," and I almost laughed out loud. I'd heard that line before every single bloodletting since the economy tanked in 2008. Every time someone got pushed out, that sign got brighter. Down in the garage, my phone didn't light up with a text or voicemail. It buzzed with a system audit alert, low-key, like a shoulder tap from a ghost. The subject line hit like a hammer. Medea, spine change attempt detected. And right then, I understood. They didn't just let me go, they tried to rewrite me. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. I was sitting in a 24-hour laundromat off Jefferson, next to a busted vending machine and a row of humming dryers, when my phone buzzed again. Same sender, another log from Medea. She was never chatty. If she pinged me, it meant someone was either sloppy or stupid, and neither was supposed to happen inside a lockdown EQMS. I'd built her as a watchdog, quiet until somebody touched the spine, the backbone. That's what we called the core SOPs that held the rest of our process stacked together. I scrolled the log, time-stamped, tagged, escrow delivered straight to my private channel, outside the system but fully documented. No patient data, no privileged access, just a blinking red flag that someone was moving things they weren't supposed to even look at. 15 minutes later, Orrin Voss called. I hadn't talked to him since a compliance meeting 6 weeks ago, and back then he was cracking jokes about his golf swing. Not now. "Graham, we've got a problem," he said, voice dry and shaking under the surface. Zurich halted the partner audit. Midway. I leaned back against the wall, drier heat on my arms. Why? Batch record summaries don't line up. Timestamps aren't syncing with the originals. It looks like someone tried to polish the chain. You mean somebody pushed a clean version of the SOPs without carrying the audit trail? He didn't respond right away. Then came a sigh that sounded like it had backup singers. They're calling it simplification, saying your system's overbuilt. Ted's locked in a room with half the leadership team and 3 whiteboards. I laughed once. Medea doesn't wake up for simplification, Orrin. She wakes up for forgery. He didn't deny it. Legal's panicking. Validation's threatening to walk. Zurich's asking for clarifications we can't give. I need you to come in, just for a day. Consultant status. Like I was some old uncle with a wrench and a thermos. You don't get me for free, I said. Not this time. If somebody wants a meeting, they speak on record, and they admit what they tried to steal. Graham, come on. You know this isn't me. No, it's worse. It's people who thought they could take shortcuts and blame the system when it caught them. He went quiet again. I could hear a clicking pen on his end. Panic sounds different when it's trying to wear a tie. I looked down at the phone screen, still lit up with the latest audit trail Medea had captured. Location tagged, user ID matched, and held in escrow. Not a threat, just the truth, ready to go. You're sitting on a live fuse, I said finally. Tell Ted if he wants to contain this, he stops lying about what happened and talks to me like someone who still has a seat at the table. Then I hung up and walked outside, letting the door slam behind me. The night air hit harder than it should have. I got back to the townhouse with my laundry still damp. The dryer timer must have glitched. Didn't matter. My phone vibrated before I even killed the engine. Santosh Vale, my old intern from dock control, sent me a photo. Blurry, fast, like he snapped it without aiming. A whiteboard in a glass conference room, red marker across the top. Project Mirror, authorship fix. Below it, lists, arrows, crossed out initials, mine included. Then he sent a screenshot of a group chat thread. Ted had typed, "Graham's stuff is the problem," like my name was some mold they'd found under the carpet. I didn't respond. I just stared at it for a few seconds and felt this dull pressure in my chest. Not rage, not even surprise, just confirmation. An hour later, Kellen Shaw from HR and Comms sent a company-wide reminder email. Subject: confidentiality expectations and professional conduct. She pasted in the usual legal boilerplate about respectful discourse and information integrity. I knew what that meant. Panic had officially entered the building. I checked Medea's dashboard. She was on amber, watching, holding, not flagging active damage. That meant they were messing with structure, but hadn't succeeded yet. Her logic tree was clear. Preserve truth. Don't disrupt function unless integrity fails. Then came the kicker. An email from Ted himself. "Hi Graham, hope you're well. We'd appreciate your insight into some documentation inconsistencies that appear to originate from your legacy control structures. Would love your perspective when convenient." Syrupy. Cold. I forwarded it straight to my personal account and archived the original. That kind of message always disappears once the lawyers step in. I've learned to keep receipts. I thought that was it for the night. Then Medea hit me with a system log that almost made me laugh out loud. A signature attempt on a locked procedure had been flagged from our offshore contractor pool. The ones we use for translating packaging inserts and regulatory language. Location: India. User alias: GTran compliance. I froze. That username wasn't mine, but it was close enough that somebody meant it to pass quick glances. The audit trail showed the attempt failed. Medea blocked it cold. But the intent was logged, preserved, and time-stamped. They weren't just trying to overwrite my system. They were trying to impersonate me. I stared at that log with my fingers curled so tight around the phone my knuckles cracked. I hadn't been let go. I'd been replaced. Not in role, not in title, in signature. I popped the trunk and tossed the wet laundry in like it insulted me. Shut it hard. This wasn't a cutback. This wasn't cleanup. This was identity theft with a corporate logo on the corner and a mirror project as the headline. And the worst part? I hadn't even hit back yet. I went inside, shut the door behind me, and dropped into the kitchen chair without turning on the lights. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was Santosh. He didn't call. He sent a screen recording. The file name was plain and ugly. Mirror contingency. Ops. He added one message under it. I didn't join. It auto-archived into Audit. You should see this. Medea had a feature I buried in plain sight years ago. If anyone tried to alter the spine documents, she preserved context, not just the edit, the who, the why, the approval trail, the ripple. She didn't accuse. She remembered. I put in earbuds and hit play. Ted Huxley's voice filled my kitchen, confident and casual, like he was discussing parking spaces instead of people's careers. We don't need Graham. We need his method. We relabel it, roll it into process modernization, and we're done. No hesitation, no apology, just logistics. Another voice cut in, Bert Kessler from finance. I recognized the nasal tone. On the equity side, we've already reclassified his unvested options into a fourth quarter compensation adjustment. Cleaner that way. It's a wash on the books. A wash. Like the weekends I spent building those controls were a rounding error. Sable Merritt spoke next. She always sounded like she was presenting to a judge. Our risk posture improves if attribution shifts away from a terminated employee. We need narrative hygiene here. Her words were polished, but her voice wasn't steady. Even through compressed audio, I could hear tension. She knew Zurich would sniff this out if the audit chain didn't line up. Then Tamsin Rowe jumped in. Younger voice, controlled, almost rehearsed. I can reproduce the structure. We'll migrate the templates under special projects. Adjust author fields. It will look organic if we stage the version history properly. Ted responded fast. Exactly. This isn't theft. It's optimization. I paused the recording and leaned forward, elbows on the table. Optimization. That's what you call it when you want to steal without saying the word. I hit play again. They went back and forth about timelines, board optics, and how to message my transition. Ted actually said, he over-engineered it. We're simplifying for scale. Like complexity was the crime. The recording ended clean, no edits. Medea's archive stamp sat in the corner of the file with a time hash and integrity seal. Untouched, verifiable, court-ready if it had to be. I pulled up the corresponding audit log. It showed the meeting invite creation, the attendee list, the document access attempts before and after. The pattern was obvious. They fired me, then moved immediately to clone the backbone under a new label and strip my name off it. I didn't feel hurt. That would have been easier. I felt stupid. I'd stayed late for years thinking loyalty bought protection. I'd defended Ted in rooms he wasn't even in. I'd believed that if the work was clean, the politics would take care of themselves. Leverage takes care of itself. Loyalty just waits to get tested. I closed the recording, opened Medea's deeper log settings, and started reviewing who approved what. Then I began taking screenshots. I didn't want revenge. I wanted record integrity. This wasn't a movie, and I wasn't some rogue genius out to crash a system for kicks. This was med device compliance. Clean records, clean chains. People's outcomes depend on which procedure revision you follow. I wasn't about to torch that because a few execs got greedy. So I used Medea the way I built her, surgical, legal, and cold. I activated a contingency flag across the backbone package. Nothing broke, nothing deleted. What it did was simple. Any report pulled for Zurich would now display visible markers if the timestamps, signature trails, or approval routes didn't align with the original chain of custody. No blocking, no redactions. Just truth, in plain daylight. Less than an hour later, Orrin texted, Zurich won't proceed without a written explanation on letterhead. Board's assembling. No, how are you? No soft entry. Just panic wrapped in corporate formatting. I sat with that for a second, then called someone who understood mess. Greta Wynn, my brother's wife, had been doing high-stakes PR for hedge funds and biotech for over a decade. She once told me the difference between a misstep and a scandal was documentation. She picked up fast. What happened? I gave her the 30-second version. She whistled once. They're gonna spin it. Probably call it a planned exit or early succession. Maybe a digital modernization effort, if they're lazy. That's what they're calling it. Optimization. Yeah, that's a cover scent for something dead. They'll try to erase you and blame over-engineering if anything leaks. You better have receipts. I've got the receipts, the signatures, and the playback. I just don't want to nuke anything. Then document, timestamp, and escrow. Nothing flashy, just prep for visibility. She was right. This wasn't about shouting, it was about positioning. I took the next 2 hours to build a clean evidence packet, just authorship chains, approval edits, and the meeting logs. No patient info, no proprietary content, just decision trail tampering tied to the exact moments they tried to overwrite the audit spine. I pushed it to 2 locations, a verified ethics hotline my company used for vendor complaints, and Zurich's compliance contact listed in their partner audit terms. I used my own name, no burner emails, no drama. At the same time, Medea kept watching. She logged every access of my legacy folders, every username that tried to run a template pull, every attempt to mass edit sign-offs. Quiet, documented, time-sealed. I didn't get some kind of rush from it. What I felt was pressure, real-world pressure. Because my daughter's wedding was in 5 months, and the venue deposit, due in 2 weeks, was sitting on my promise. I told her I'd handle it, and she believed me. That mattered more than getting credit for a control protocol. So I stayed calm. Not because I wasn't angry, I was, but because anger doesn't move systems. Leverage does. They thought they'd written me out, but they triggered the one thing I'd made sure couldn't be overwritten. Medea wasn't just a watchdog, she was a mirror, and when they poked her, she pointed right back. I sat there in my quiet kitchen, not to plan revenge, but to apply just enough pressure that the truth would surface on its own. By the next morning, I didn't need to check Medea's logs to know they were getting desperate. Santosh texted at 6:30 a.m. right before his shift. They pulled me into a room, HR, asking about unauthorized document activity. I called him on the spot. He answered on the second ring, whispering. They kept repeating that phrase, unauthorized activity, like they wanted me to fill in the blanks. They mention your name directly? No, but they printed out a snapshot of the audit archive, the one with the meeting invite for mirror contingency. Did you admit anything? I said I didn't join. I didn't open anything, which is the truth. It lined up with Medea's records. He'd never accessed the file, just saw it drop into the archive and flagged it to me. But they were still circling him, like he was the leak they could patch. While I was on the phone, I got a notification from someone I hadn't heard from in months, Harlan DeWitt. Internal investigations. Sharp, calm, and allergic to executive spin. We spoke 5 minutes later. Off the record, Graham, he said. Ted's office is floating a narrative. Says an inexperienced staffer made a change, and the system overreacted. Santosh? Unconfirmed, but heavily implied. They're gonna burn the kid. That's why I'm calling. I walked to the back window and looked out at the townhouse row across the alley. I'm not guessing, Harlan. Medea's trail is solid. I know who initiated the spine edits, and it wasn't Santosh. He didn't even have sign authority. I figured. His access level's junior. He couldn't have approved those changes even if he wanted to. They're trying to frame him to avoid saying the word forgery. Harlan didn't reply, but I heard him exhale through his nose. He wasn't just angry, he was insulted. An hour later, I got another quiet ping. Noelle Park from Validation. Her message was cautious. We're being pressured to sign off on change records that don't reconcile, just FYI. I called her. She didn't answer, but the fact she reached out at all told me the lie was cracking from the inside. Noelle didn't bend for politics. If she was feeling heat, it meant Ted was twisting arms harder than usual. And then, a curveball. Tamsin Rowe messaged me. Not through her work email, not through Teams. She used a personal number and started with just, I have proof. Ted ordered it. The whole thing. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then another came through. I'll give you the doc trail. Clone planning, attribution edits, internal notes. In exchange, I want immunity. Clean exit. NDA. No stain. I'm not going down for his mess. I called her. She picked up fast, voice low and fast, like she was ducking into a stairwell. I want a way out, Graham. I didn't build this. I just got told what to say. I didn't yell. I didn't play hero. You want a deal? Start with Santosh. You don't let them pin this on him. You protect him first, then we talk. She didn't answer right away. Are we clear? I said. Crystal. I ended the call. Then I opened Medea and flagged her latest access record. Tamsin had 5 days of document history in her fingerprint already. She just didn't realize who else had been watching. Not me, Medea. And Medea didn't miss. Less than 24 hours after Tamsin's call, I got a message from Oren. Just a photo. High res. Zurich's letterhead with 2 thick paragraphs and a deadline printed in bold near the bottom. 48 hours to resolve the authorship and audit integrity issue, or the partner program would be suspended. No discussion. No clarification. Just governance failure in writing. Oren followed it with a text. Thought you'd want the original. They'll start summarizing soon. He wasn't wrong. Board panic always starts with summaries. Meanwhile, Ted did what men like him always do when boxed in. He tried to jam through a fix. I heard from 2 people, then saw it myself in Medea's logs. He ordered a rapid rewrite of the core SOPs. New titles, new attribution, no audit trail. Like repainting a house while the foundation was still shifting. Medea didn't blink. She locked the affected procedures in a compliance hold and forced full visibility. That meant no quiet edits, no ghost changes, no swapping authors in the dark. Everything left a print. Sable Merritt, our general counsel, started calling it a containment scenario. That was legal's way of saying the fire had jumped the wall. This wasn't internal anymore. This was regulatory exposure. Then came the final fracture. One of Medea's passive triggers caught a recording from a standing call Ted held with his directors. He was rambling through SOP status updates and completely botched his own talking points. He said approval date when he meant effective date, reversed a timestamp field, and contradicted what he'd told the same group 2 days earlier. That kind of mistake matters. You can't bluff through governance if you don't know which field you changed. Boards don't just hate liars, they hate sloppy liars. I didn't even have to dig for it. Medea flagged it and pushed it straight to the archive with a marker. Inconsistency detected. Exec summary call. And then Tamsin delivered. She sent me a draft slide deck titled Mirror Rollout, Attribution Plan. It was my structure, stripped and relabeled. Templates I'd built from scratch, scrubbed of my name, framed like they came from special projects. She even added a line item called Author Attribution Migration Path. No accident, no oversight, a full-blown theft. Along with the deck, she sent one last message. They told me if it goes bad, it'll be my fault, that I was brought in because I'm disposable. That stuck. It wasn't just Ted anymore. It was every suit in that room who'd nodded along. Every spreadsheet guy who thought control architecture was just paperwork they could rename when it got inconvenient. That's when I stopped thinking about revenge and started thinking about cleanup. Not just of one man, but of the whole decision-making loop that believed expertise could be duplicated like a form letter. I opened Medea's latest cross-referenced log set, filtered by template access and signature attempts. Then I created a new tag in the archive. Mirror, authenticity breach. From there, I didn't need a strategy, just time, and a little more pressure, because Zurich had spoken. Now I just had to make sure they didn't forget. The meeting invite called it an internal governance review, but inside the building, everyone just called it what it was, a live hearing. The board needed a show. Zurich was breathing down their neck, clients were whispering about certification risk, and half the company had already heard about the clone attempt. The link opened into a grid of nervous faces, executives in suits, department heads pretending this wasn't already a public mess. I was listed as observer, which is HR's way of saying, please don't make this worse. Ted showed up 5 minutes late in a tailored blue suit, hair slicked back, smile locked in place. He looked like a man walking into a dealership to trade in a car he already wrecked. Kellen Shaw from HR started soft. We recognize that recent events have caused confusion. This isn't about blame. It's about understanding process turbulence. Then Bert Kessler chimed in, leaning into finance speak like it could save him. This was a compensation alignment effort. Certain equity structures required. Sable Merritt didn't say much at first, just flipped pages on her notes like each one owed her an apology. Then Ted started talking. He used words like minor discrepancies and workflow refinements. He said, "We were modernizing legacy documentation practices to streamline audit readiness." That's when Medea stepped in, unprompted. The moment Ted called the changes minor, the archive logs surfaced a visual trace, clear, time-stamped, board-readable. It showed the full edit chain, the attribution changes, the access records, the meeting notes, the planned migration, the whole mirror plan. The board chair interrupted Ted mid-sentence. "Can you explain who authorized this clone process and why no audit trail was preserved?" Ted blinked fast, then said, "Special projects initiated that stream. Attribution wasn't final. Nothing was signed off." That was his out. Blame the ghost team. But Tamsin Rowe was watching, and apparently she'd had enough of being the ghost. She unmuted, camera on, and spoke flat. "I followed instructions. The attribution was deliberate. The edits were approved internally." You could hear people typing in real time, emails, chats, panic starting to pivot. Santosh texted me from inside the meeting room. "The company chat is melting down. People aren't scared. They're furious." That's when I spoke. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one clear sentence. "I didn't sabotage operations. I built guardrails. Someone else tried to drive around them, with my name on the steering wheel." Silence. Then a cough. Then Sable finally looked up from her notes. The board chair spoke again. "Effective immediately, Mr. Huxley is suspended pending review. We will request a full remediation plan." He paused, then added, "Authored by the original architect." There it was, plain as anything. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't fired. I was the one they needed to fix what they'd tried to fake. And for the first time since this started, Ted didn't say a word. Not a single one. 2 days after the hearing, I walked back into headquarters, but not through the employee lane. My badge was dead. Instead, I used my old consultant credential, the one tied to a standing board facing QA remediation profile nobody had bothered to deactivate. The scanner blinked green like nothing had happened. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air, but underneath that was something else. Fear. People weren't chatting near the elevators. Conversations cut off when I stepped through. Nobody made direct eye contact for more than a second. The building knew. Upstairs, I met with the board chair, Sable Merritt, and Harlan DeWitt in the executive conference room. Orrin sat off to the side, shoulders tight, like he expected the ceiling tiles to start falling. I didn't waste time. I placed one folder on the table. Clean tabs, indexed, Zurich ready. It wasn't revenge material. It was remediation, tight corrective actions, documented authorship restoration, control integrity fixes, and a timeline that showed exactly where governance failed and how to seal it properly. "This protects product integrity first," I said. "Everything else comes after that." The board chair flipped through it slowly. Sable scanned the executive summary twice. Then I slid a second document across the table. "These are my terms." I kept my voice steady, no drama. "Reinstatement of my unvested equity and withheld bonus. A written public correction of authorship on the backbone procedures. Formal protection for staff who were pressured to sign or stay silent." Nobody interrupted. "And one more," I added. "Any executive performance payouts tied to the mirror plan get redirected into an employee compliance fund. Training support, overtime reimbursement, audit preparation coverage. Documented." Bert Kessler wasn't supposed to be in the room, but he'd shown up anyway. He leaned forward, already shaking his head. That's not how compensation structures work. Sable didn't even look at him when she responded. The compensation adjustments you made are now part of the evidence chain, Bert. I would recommend flexibility. He leaned back fast after that. Didn't say another word. Ted wasn't there at first. I knew he was in the building because his assistant had been pacing outside earlier, but he made us wait. When he finally walked in, he looked different. Same suit style, same polished shoes, but something in his posture had collapsed, like the fabric didn't fit the story anymore. He didn't sit, just stood at the end of the table. I met his eyes. "This doesn't have to get uglier," I said, "but if you lie again, my escrow packet expands. Zurich won't treat that gently." He swallowed, looked at Sable, looked at the board chair. No one jumped in to save him. By mid-afternoon, the resignation letter was drafted. He signed it without theatrics. Tamsin negotiated her exit quietly. Her name disappeared from the rollout deck drafts, and so did any claim to authorship. Santosh kept his job. More than that, he kept his reputation. When I left the building that day, I didn't swipe out like an employee. I walked out as leverage. That Friday night, I watched Ted's resignation statement on the internal live stream from my kitchen table. I had a reheated burrito on a paper towel and a glass of water sweating next to my laptop. It felt almost boring, which is how you know something big already ended. Ted looked straight into the camera and called it a personal decision during a challenging period. He thanked the board. The board thanked him for his service. Nobody used the words authorship or audit trail. Boards are allergic to plain language. They prefer phrases that sand down the truth until it barely has edges. I muted the stream halfway through and finished eating. The next week, my restored equity and withheld bonus came through exactly how I demanded, documented, signed, and countersigned. Not promised in a hallway, not implied in a call. On paper. I learned a long time ago that promises don't cash. Paper does. Zurich resumed the partner review under a revised governance plan. My remediation packet moved forward with my name on the authorship line again. No asterisks. No legacy framework language. Just the truth. A few days later, Medea pinged me one more time. Optional action available. Based on the confirmed control breaches, she could automatically recalculate and claw back certain executive incentive payouts. The system waited for my input. I stared at the screen longer than I expected. It would have been easy to press the harsh button. Clean, legal, final. Instead, I selected the approved path we negotiated. Lock evidence, preserve archive, route the redirected funds into the employee compliance pool exactly as documented. Training coverage, overtime reimbursement, audit prep support. I didn't need to tear everything apart. I just needed it on record. Oren left me a voicemail that night. His voice sounded older, thinner. "You saved us from something ugly," he said. "I don't think people realize how close that got." Noel texted the next morning. "You did the right kind of damage." Santosh came by that weekend with a paper bag full of takeout and that stunned expression younger guys get when they finally see how power really works. He sat at my kitchen counter and said, "I thought if you worked hard enough, none of this would matter." "It always matters," I told him. "That's why you document it." Greta forwarded me a trade publication clip calling the whole mess a governance failure. Her message underneath read, "They wanted to erase you. Now they have to footnote you." I never went back as an employee. Instead, I opened a small compliance shop out of a leased office 10 minutes from my townhouse. 2 clients to start, tight scope, strict rules. Santosh came on part-time while he finished his certification hours. Smaller, sharper, meaner in the only way that counts. Nobody gets to steal the spine and pretend they built the body. Hold up for a second. When someone at your job tried to rewrite your work and your name, would you stay quiet or bring the truth out in the open? If you've got the hype button, tap it to support this video and help it reach more people. Please subscribe and hit like too. It's huge for us and it's just one click. Now drop a comment, even good story, or tell me what you would have done.